Welcome to the Tell Us Ellis podcast.
What is up, everybody? It is so good to be back with you again and excited to talk about something that's not football, believe it or not. Don't get me wrong, I love football. Football's great. We all love football, right? One of the greatest sports of all time. But, we're nearing the end of the football season. We had the national championship in college football Monday. Congratulations to the Indiana Hoosiers. Unbelievable. An incredible story, a movie-making story. We will be reviewing a movie on the Indiana Hoosiers national championship win. It will be a story of Curt Cignetti. It will be a story of Mendoza. It'll be a story of just a team that came together, and it's incredible. Congratulations to all the Hoosier fans out there. I'm a Penn State guy. You guys know that. I'm a Penn State guy. How could I be happy for the Hoosiers? I don't know, but I am. And that would have been the case whether I lived in Indiana or whether I lived in Pennsylvania or whether I lived in Hawaii. It is just an unbelievable thing that happened. And we're in an era where that transfer portal really helps teams. However, it is still incredible to beat Oregon twice in a year, to beat Ohio State, to beat Alabama, and then to beat Miami in the national championship. Incredible. Congratulations again to the Hoosiers, to the Hoosier fans. Remarkable. We've got the Final Four of the NFL coming up this weekend. Then we have a week off before the big Super Bowl. But then what? Where do we go from there? Well, I'm going to lean into one of the things that we can go to after the football season is over, and that is Major League Baseball, one of my favorite sports. It has been my favorite sport forever. I think baseball has some issues that they need to figure out. They've been working on some of those issues. They've been doing a really good job. My beloved Orioles, who have been more bad than good for the better part of 30, 40 years. They are improving. They've improved. They've won the American League East. They made a huge push into the playoffs up until last year when they fell back. But I think they're building something, and I'm excited about that. So I think there's a lot of good things on the horizon for Major League Baseball. We may have some issues that we have to deal with on the salary cap side, all of that, but we'll deal with that after the 2026 season. So we've got that coming up. We have a huge UFC event Saturday, the first Paramount Plus event. You no longer have to pay per show. If you're a subscriber to Paramount Plus, you get a chance to see this event and all events for UFC going forward. Really good card. Not going to get into it, but it is something I'm going to be watching this weekend. And then again, we're going to turn our attention a little bit more to baseball. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the changes of the teams in the Eastern Division of both the American League and National League. I'll cover the Eastern Division today, the Central Divisions in another podcast, and then the Western Divisions in another podcast. But I'm not necessarily focusing on how these teams will be next year. It's more about how the teams have changed. What additions have they made? What departures have there been? What does their prospect list look like? How are they going to fill some holes? We still have really good free agents on the board. There was a big trade last night with Freddie Peralta going from the Brewers to the Mets. So everything's in flux right now, but I thought it would be a good time to pause and take a look at where we are, team by team, Major League Baseball, starting with the American League and National League East. So excited to get into it. Make sure you're following me on YouTube. That's at Tell Us Ellis Media. Go click the subscribe button. Make sure you subscribe. Followers are great. And then if you like the show, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Also follow me on social media, on X and on Instagram. It's at Tell Us Ellis HQ. And then send me an email if you want to be part of the show. If you have questions, again, I've got to get to a show just answering questions that are coming up. But just email me, jamie@tellusellis.com. So without further ado, let's put away the football, let's put away the helmet, and let's pick up a bat and let's start talking baseball. Okay, where I'd like to start this discussion is just going over the Eastern Division teams of the American League and National League and talk about some of the changes we've seen with those teams. Again, this is not a podcast about predicting how teams will finish. We will do team-by-team capsules during spring training, but for now, it's just kind of a quick reset. Where are we today? So I want to start with the American League champion Toronto Blue Jays. and look at some of the changes to their roster that have occurred in the offseason. So, a couple of free agents that are still out there that are not on Toronto's roster but were last year include Chris Bassett. Chris Bassett is a very good pitcher, and he is going to be picked up by someone. It very well could be the Blue Jays. 11-9, 3.96 ERA last season, through 170 innings. He's a good middle to, back of the rotation starter, number 3 and number 4, who can give you some innings. Ty France is a first baseman who played some time for the Blue Jays last year. He's a 257 hitter last year, 7 homers, 52 RBIs. Isaiah Kinner-Falefa is also out there, 262, 2 home runs, 40 RBIs, 15 stolen bases. And then Sir Anthony Dominguez. Those are all free agents that were on the Blue Jays last year that they did not sign as of yet, and they are still free agents, so they could be signed. Also on that list is Max Scherzer. Now, Max Scherzer threw 85 innings last year, obviously on the back end of a Hall of Fame career, 5-5, a 5.19 ERA. I don't know if he will be signed by the Blue Jays. I don't know if he is going to be signed before spring training. I don't even know if he's going to be signed by opening day, but he is a guy that could be a big help to a team down the road. So again, the biggest loss there for the Blue Jays, probably Bassett, that is, again, still a free agent. But so who have the Blue Jays lost in free agency that have been signed by another team? Not this person. These people will not come back. And the biggest one is Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette is a 311 hitter last year, an OPS of 806, 18 home runs, 94 RBIs. He has had 175 or more hits in 4 of the last 5 seasons. That is a big loss. Bichette goes to the Mets, who we'll talk about in a little bit. That is a big loss. Have they made up for that loss thus far in the offseason? Well, let's talk about that. They have focused quite a bit on the pitching side of the house. They first signed Dylan Cease to a 7-year deal. That's a long time for a pitcher. Dylan Cease, is he worth it? 8-12 last year with a 4.55 ERA. Not the kind of stats that you want from a pitcher that you're signing for 7 years. He has in 168 innings, he gave up 152 hits. He did strike out 215 batters. He is a strikeout pitcher. But if you look at last year, if last year was an anomaly, what did he do in 2024, the year before that? Well, he was 14-11 with a 3.47 ERA. And struck out 224 batters. He only gave up 137 hits in 189 innings. If they're getting that pitcher, that is a top of the rotation pitcher that will pay a lot of dividends. So Dylan Cease, a huge signing on the pitching side. Tyler Rogers is another pitcher that they signed, and I don't want to undervalue Tyler Rogers. He has a huge bullpen arm. Tyler Rogers last year was 4-6, but a 1.98 ERA. And he pitched in half the games, 81 games. So out of a 162 game schedule, he's throwing in 81 games. That is going to be a big bullpen piece for the Blue Jays. Incidentally, the Blue Jays bullpen the relief pitching, it was kind of in the middle of the league. If you look at relief pitcher ERA, they finished 16th in the league. WHIP was 14th in the league. So this will help them out quite a bit in the bullpen. They also signed Cody Ponce, and Cody Ponce is a pitcher that threw for the KBO League over in Asia. And in 2025, Cody Ponce went 17-1 with a 1.89 ERA. And in 180 innings, only gave up 128 hits, and he struck out 252 batters. Now, how does that translate into Major League Baseball? There is an adjustment factor. We don't know yet. But right now, Dylan Cease is definitely penciled in as a starting pitcher. Cody Ponce, if you look at the starters right now for the Blue Jays, he would probably fall in that 5th, 6th range right now. But I think a lot will depend on how he throws this spring. The Blue Jays also signed another pitcher, Chase Lee. He is a relief pitcher. Threw for a 4.10 ERA last year, but again, more depth on the pitching side. Their big hitting addition was third baseman Kazuma Okamoto. They signed him to a 4-year deal. Okamoto, again, playing in Asia last year, batted .322 with an OPS of .992, 15 home runs, 51 RBIs. He averaged 33 home runs from 2018 to 2024. Again, very difficult to translate that to Major League Baseball, but the thinking is that he will be penciled in as the starting third baseman for the Blue Jays next year. So lost Bo Bichette, picked up Okamoto from an offensive standpoint, added several arms that could be really good. So what does that mean? What do the Blue Jays look like? And I will say, you look at their lineup, you have George Springer, who had a really good year last year, 32 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 309 average. You have Vladimir Guerrero, obviously. He has not hit for the power in recent years that many would expect of him, but if he's a 292 hitter with 23 home runs, I think you'll take that. On base percentage of 381 and a slugging percentage of 467. Yeah, you'll take that. You have Anthony Santander, who was absolutely abysmal, hurt most of the year for Toronto. They signed him to a big contract. If he can have a comeback year, that will be a big lift for the Blue Jays. And then, we talked about obviously Okamoto. From a pitching standpoint, you look at their pitching, they've got Kevin Gausman, pitched to a 3.59 ERA last year, very solid top half of the rotation pitcher. Dylan Cease, we talked about it. He could slot one or two. Shane Bieber, coming back again from elbow surgery, pitched last year to a 3.57 ERA. This will be his first full year back from elbow surgery. Jose Barrios, the veteran, pitched to a 4.17 ERA last year, but he can log innings for you. He pitched 166 innings last year. Trey Savage, kind of the postseason hero for the Blue Jays and one of the top prospects in baseball. He will definitely be part of that starting rotation. 3.21 ERA last year. So really, really solid starting staff. If you look at the Blue Jays last year, overall, their hitting was tops in the league. Their batting average was number one in baseball. On base percentage was number one. OPS was number 3. They were 11th in the league in home runs, near the back end in stolen bases, but this is more of a power doubles team. Their starting pitching was not as good as you would expect it to be, given some of the names I rattled off. But again, they've kind of addressed that. Really love the starting pitching. Bullpen has good arms. Their lineup, yes, they have some holes, but you do have Springer if he can repeat himself. Vlad, you do want that bounce back from Santander. If you look at their prospects, they don't have a lot of up and coming prospects that will probably impact the 2026 season. Their best prospect outside of Savage, by the way, their best prospect is probably Ricky Tiedemann, and Tiedemann is teetering on the top 100 list of prospects, but again, falls right outside of it. So Blue Jays are going to be tough, no doubt about it. Let's move to my beloved Baltimore Orioles. When you look at the Orioles and what has happened in the offseason, they've lost a couple of guys. Gary Sanchez was a backup catcher they lost. Sagano was a pitcher who logged 157 innings for them. By the way, I say they lost these guys. They're technically still free agents. I do not think they will be returning to the Orioles next year. Subtractions, they traded Grayson Rodriguez, which was a surprise, traded him in the offseason. Surprise because he has so much team control left, yet he has been very inconsistent and lots of health questions there. And then Jorge Mateo, who didn't really play much last year, was injured most of the season. So when you look at what they lost, it wasn't a whole lot. And now you look at what they added, right? The biggest name, obviously, is Pete Alonso. They went all in on Alonso, 5-year deal. Alonso batted .272 last year. His OPS was .871. He hit 38 home runs, drove in 126 RBIs. He is that big middle of the order bat, veteran presence, huge pickup for the Orioles. Love that at first base. They also traded, as I said, Grayson Rodriguez and picked up Taylor Ward in that trade. Don't know if I love the trade again, but Taylor Ward, you can't deny it. While his batting average was only .228 last year, he hit 36 home runs and drove in 103 RBIs. So pretty good bat in the lineup. You look at another outfielder they signed to a 1-year deal, and that's Leody Tavares. Again, only a 205 hitter. This guy's never hit for average, but a good utility guy that can play the outfield. 9 stolen bases last year. Again, not guaranteed to make the roster. He could be released. They signed him to a pretty small deal, so we'll see about that. Now, when you look at the pitching additions, they added Ryan Helsley, who, you know, 2 years ago had 49 saves for the Cardinals, a 2.04 ERA. Last year, pitched to a 4.50 ERA, not as good, but Orioles needed some help in the back end of that bullpen with Felix Bautista's injury. So Helsley will fill in nicely there. They also made a trade with the Rays for Shane Baz. I love Shane Baz. He was a big time prospect, had arm issues. He is now fully recovered. Pitched last year, went 10-12. His ERA was 4.87. But there are some other numbers that when you look at him, he has a lot of upside. And I think he could be perhaps their best pitcher by the end of next year. And he has team control left. So really like the addition of Shane Baz. Threw 166 innings last year, so he's going to give you some innings. They also added Andrew Kittredge, a former Oriole. They added him back. You know, Kittredge 4-3 with a 3.40 ERA out of the pen last year. A great arm to add to it, a right-hand pitcher, so I really like that. They re-signed Albert Suarez on a minor league deal. He had limited action in 25, but if you go back to 24, Suarez both was a starting pitcher and relief pitcher, pitched to a 3.70 ERA, 9-7. So I like the depth there. And then most recently, they signed Zach Eflin back. I think fans were a little disappointed in that. I don't think the Orioles are done. I think they still could be in the mix for a top 3 of the rotation starter. A couple guys that would fit that bill, obviously Framber Valdez, who I've been pretty vocal about on social media, a guy I would love to see in an Orioles uniform. But if they don't get him, there's another guy out there by the name of Zach Gallen. So I don't think the Orioles are done. I really like the additions they've made. When you look at where they finished last year in the league, overall hitting, they were 24th in average, first in OPS, 7th in home runs. So hitting wise, they were on the back half of the league. And now you have a team that has Jackson Holliday in the lineup, a young player, 22 years old, that's continuing to develop. I would expect big things from him next year. Jordan Westberg was hurt. Hopefully he bounces back and has a full season. If he does, I think 20 home runs aren't out of the question for him, and he could bat in that 275 to 300 range. Gunnar Henderson, an all-star. Some say he had a down season last year, batted 274, 17 home runs. He did have 30 stolen bases. I think he could absolutely bounce back. He had some shoulder injuries last year. You put Pete Alonso in the middle of that lineup. You still have Adley Rutschman, who's been disappointing the last couple of years. Taylor Ward could play the outfield. Dylan Beavers, a young player, only 24 years of age, had a really good run in Baltimore last year. And then Colton Cowser in the lineup and a DH of one of the best prospects in baseball, Samuel Basallo. I think this offense is going to be much improved next year. So excited about that. By the way, you still have Tyler O'Neill and Ryan Mountcastle on the bench probably. Jeremiah Jackson was a great utility player for the Orioles last year. So I think those offensive numbers will improve. From a starting pitcher standpoint, ERA 24th in the league, WHIP 21st in the league, again, kind of on that back half of the league. But you should have a full year of Kyle Bradish, who came back from Tommy John surgery and pitched to a 2.53 ERA in limited action. Trevor Rogers was Cy Young last year. I mean, he got Cy Young votes. 1.81 ERA, 109 innings. He only gave up 70 hits. He's not a big strikeout pitcher, but boy, if he can replicate that or come close to replicating it, you've got to feel good about that. You've got Shane Baz, as I said, in the rotation now, Zach Eflin, and you still have Dean Kramer, who is a really good back of the rotation arm. He's a 4.19 ERA. He threw 171 innings last year. So even if you don't add anybody else, that's an improved rotation. Now, if you do get a Framber Valdez or a Zach Gallen or someone like that, all of a sudden one of those arms gets pushed to the bullpen. And I think the Orioles bullpen has improved just because there's more depth there right now. Their bullpen, again, back half of the league last year, but now you have Helsley closing. You have Kittredge as a setup man. Keegan Aiken coming off a good year, 3.41 ERA as a setup man. Cade Stroud, can he replicate what he did last year, 1.71 ERA? The Orioles signed Colin Selby in last July, 3.21 ERA. Tyler Wells coming back from Tommy John surgery, pitched to a 2.91 ERA in limited action last year. He could play that 6th, 7th inning role. Again, I think this is a much improved team. So excited about it. Prospect-wise, I talked about Basayo, 9th best prospect in baseball, according to Baseball America. Dylan Beavers is still in the prospect rankings. He didn't qualify by having enough at-bats last year. So Dylan Beavers, number 21 prospect in Baseball America. And then the Orioles had another player that could impact the 2026 season potentially, and that's Trey Gibson. He's a pitcher. He'll probably be in AAA this year, 23 years old. He's ranked as he is ranked as the 72nd best prospect in baseball. So a lot to like there if you're an Orioles fan. Let me flip now to the Tampa Bay Rays. Not a lot of free agents that are still free agents out there. They have lost quite a bit. They have lost Brandon Lowe, and I always get confused if it's Brandon Lau or Brandon Lowe because they have Brandon Lau or Lowe. They have Josh Lowe or Lau, so forgive me. Brandon was part of a 3-team trade with the Pirates and Astros. He's departing. Josh, part of a 3-team trade with the Angels and Reds. He's departing. They lost Shane Baz to the Orioles. We just talked about that. They lost Pete Fairbanks, big bullpen arm, 2.83 ERA in 60 innings. They lost Adrian Hauser, 125 innings logged last year and a 3.31 ERA. They lost a couple of utility players, Morel and Meisner. So they lost some things. They also picked up some folks as part of trades and as part of just signings. Steven Matz, who has converted into a pretty good bullpen arm. He can kind of be that swing pitcher. 5-2, 3.05 ERA last year. He hasn't thrown more than 105 innings since 2021, so he may be a swingman or bullpen arm. Gavin Lux, one of the former top prospects in baseball, came over in one of the 3-team deals. Lux, a 269 hitter, 5 home runs, 53 RBIs, 724 OPS. See what he can do in Tampa. They signed Cedric Mullins. Cedric Mullins, boy, brutal last couple of years. I don't even know what to say. His OPS over the last 4 years, 690, 710, 721, 721. He has logged at least 19 steals every year since 2021. I guess that's good. And then they've added a couple of depth pieces, but feels like they lost a little more than they picked up. There's not a lot of power in this lineup. When you look at the lineup right now, yes, you've added Gavin Lux. Junior Caminero, certainly one of their great young players. He's a 45 home run guy last year, 264 hitter, and he is only 22 years old. So there's a lot to like there. But outside of him and Yandy Diaz, there's not a lot of power on this team. Caminero, 45 home runs last year. Yandy Diaz, 25 home runs last year. You look at the players on this team currently, the next highest home run hitter was actually Cedric Mullins with 17 home runs. You don't really think of him as a home run hitter. So this is a lineup that last year was 9th in the league in average, 14th in OPS. I think they're going to fall back a little bit this year. Then you look at their starting pitching. Starting pitching last year, they were right in the middle of the pack as far as starting pitching goes. Drew Rasmussen had a really good year, 2.76 ERA. Hopefully he can replicate that, 150 innings. He only gave up 116 hits. Ryan Pepio, 386 ERA, 167 innings pitched. Uh, Shane McClanahan, huge wild card. Is he going to come back? When is he going to come back? Coming off of surgery. So that's one to watch. We talked about Matz, could be a swing man. So again, I'm a little worried about that starting pitching. Now, when you think of the Rays, you always think about good young players. And when I look at the players, the good young prospects that could impact this team this year, there's a couple of them, but maybe not the depth of prospects that they've once had. So their top prospect that could impact the year is Brody Hopkins. He is 30th on Baseball America's top 100 prospect list. He's a starting pitcher. He could impact the team in 2026. Carson Williams, who is 15th in Baseball America's top 25, and he did get some at-bats last year, but he struggled. So we'll see if, what ends up with him. Right now, do I expect him to start the year in Tampa? I don't think so, but we'll see. We'll see how spring goes. And then Jacob Melton is the 70th best prospect according to Baseball America. He could be a contributor as well in 2026. So not seeing much improvement there from the Rays. Let's switch now to the Red Sox. So the Red Sox had a lot of movement in the offseason. First, the Red Sox, the free agents that are still free agents but have not been re-signed yet by the Red Sox, start with Lucas Giolito. Had a really good year, 10-4, 3.41 ERA, 145 innings pitched. I think that's a big loss for them, a good, reliable arm. Nathaniel Lowe, also, they lost him. You look at his average 228 last year, but he did hit 18 home runs and drive in 84 runs. So not sure if they'll re-sign him or not. Justin Wilson pitched in 61 games for the Red Sox last year, through to a 3.35 ERA and a 1.41 whip. So that's a bullpen arm that they may end up losing. The players that they absolutely lost because they signed with another team or they were part of a trade include the big one, Alex Bregman. So Bregman batted .273 last year with an .822 OPS and 18 home runs, 62 RBIs. He was one of the coveted free agents this year, and the Red Sox could not re-sign him. He signed with the Cubs. Beyond that, Steven Matz, who we've already spoken about, they lost him, kind of played that swingman role for the Red Sox last year. Dustin May had a one-year run with the Red Sox, 7-11 with a 4.96 ERA. Still kind of a young guy, but had a number of elbow surgeries, but they will lose his 123 innings next year. And then a couple of, I'll call utility players, Rob Refsnyder, Richard Fitz, Brandon Clark, Hunter Dobbins. Those are both pitchers and hitters that they lost. Probably not the most impact players to lose. So how do they make up for an Alex Bregman, a Steven Matz, a Dustin May? Where do they fill those innings? Where do they fill that production in the infield? Well, a couple ways. Number one, they made a trade with the Cardinals to get Wilson Contreras. Contreras, first baseman, 57 hitter last year, 20 home runs, 80 RBIs. He will fit in nicely in that lineup, playing first base for the Red Sox. It's interesting. They still have Tristan Casas, who was out with an injury all of last year or most of last year. Where will he end up fitting in? We'll have to see. We'll figure that out. Not sure he's going to be ready for opening day. They also signed a couple of starting pitchers. The biggest one is Ranger Suarez. He was one of the top pitchers on the market. Suarez was 12-8 with a 3.20 ERA for the Phillies last year. 157 innings, 161 strikeouts, not a huge strikeout pitcher, but a 122 whip. He should fit in nicely in Boston. Sonny Gray, the ageless wonder, Sonny Gray, in a part of that trade with the Cardinals, Gray comes over. He was 14-8 with the Cardinals last year. Just a 4.28 ERA. I say just a. I mean, that's not a bad ERA in baseball. Most importantly, he logged 180 innings for the Cardinals last year. So between Gray and Suarez and also Johan Oviedo, who came over in a trade with the Pirates. That's another guy who could fit into that starting rotation. Maybe a number 5 starter, could drop to the bullpen. I think between those additions, they've addressed some of their losses nicely. Have they improved themselves? Well, maybe from a pitching standpoint, they have. I don't know about hitting wise, but when you look at where they finished last year, they were 4th in the league in average, 9th in OPS, not a bad hitting team. Starting pitching, they were 12th in ERA, 20th in WHIP, so a little bit beyond middle of the pack. I think this will bring them up towards the first half of the pack as far as starting pitching goes. Their relief pitching, 2nd in ERA, 9th in WHIP. I think they may have improved some of their starting pitching, especially if an Oviedo ends up in the bullpen. Overall, they do have some injuries. Some will be out for the year. Tanner Houck had Tommy John surgery in the middle of last year, more towards the end of last year. Cutter Crawford should be back for spring training. And then I mentioned Cassis. Look, I think there's a lot to like. I think they're still well balanced, even with losing Bregman as far as a lineup goes. If you look at, well, let me dig in specifically to their lineup. You've got Roman Anthony, 21 years old right now, batted .292 last year, still developing, and should have a full season, right? Marcelo Mayer, .228 hitter last year, only had 136 plate appearances. He should be a regular everyday player at third base. Again, considered at one point a top prospect in baseball, so that's great. Then you have guys that are kind of more, I'll call them veteran players that are coming back. That includes Trevor Story, who had a fantastic season last year. 25 home runs, .263 average, 31 stolen bases. Fantastic. Jarren Duran, who took a little bit of a step back last year after a really good 24 campaign, but he still batted .256, stole 24 bases, 16 home runs. So again, I like this lineup. I like this team a lot. You look at their starting pitching, Garrett Crochet, .259 ERA last year, over 205 innings, 255 strikeouts. Sonny Gray and Ranger Suarez are being added to that rotation. I mean, that's 182, 80. That's 330 innings being added to that starting staff. And then you've got a guy like Brian Bello, who 3.35 ERA last year, 26 years old. There is a lot to like for this team. So really excited. If you look at their prospects, players that could impact them this year, Franklin Arias, I'll start with him. He's the 49th overall prospect, probably AA this year. Could sniff the majors, but we'll see. He's a shortstop second baseman. Peyton Toll is a starting pitcher, 23 years old, 17th prospect in baseball, according to Baseball America. He's at 23. He very well could make the majors at some point this season. And then another one who could be in the mix in 26 is Conley Early. He is ranked as a top 100 pitcher or top 100 player in Baseball America. So the Red Sox have some additions they can make throughout the season. Again, a lot to like here. Let me flip now to the Yankees, the dreaded Yankees. It's really interesting. The Yankees obviously made the playoffs last year. I think if you're a Yankee fan, you would say it was a disappointment. When you look at the free agents that are still out there, Jake Cousins, Paul Goldschmidt, and Austin Slater, not sure if any of those really move the needle that much. No, I shouldn't say that. Jake Cousins, I think, does. He's a bullpen arm, which sometimes I tend to discount, but in this day and age, bullpen arms are so important. Cousins was 5-2 with a .278 ERA last year in 88 games. He pitched in 88 games for the Yankees. Incredible. 90 and 2/3 innings, struck out 125 batters, a 125 whip. I think the Yankees have to seriously consider re-signing him. Now, those are the players that are still out there. They have lost Devin Williams, who definitely had a down year and a disappointing year for the Yankees. Still has one of the best changeups in the game, but 4-6 with a .479 ERA last year, 18 saves, no longer with the Yankees. He's with the Mets. So they are moving on from Devin Williams. They're also moving on from Luke Weaver, another relief pitcher and another player that is with the Mets now. Weaver was 4-4 with a 3.62 ERA, 64 and 2/3 innings, and 72 strikeouts. They will miss that bullpen arm. They will probably miss Mark Leiter as well. I say probably because ERA was 4.84, but again, bullpen arms, I look at the innings you're giving him, and he pitched 48 innings last year, 54 strikeouts. So that was a big, a big piece of that Yankees bullpen. Ian Hamilton signed with the Braves. He logged 40 innings with the Yankees last year in relief. So they lost a lot on the bullpen side. So what have they added? Well, they re-signed Cody Bellinger just this week, and that's huge, right? Cody Bellinger, 272 last year, 29 home runs, 98 RBIs, 13 stolen bases. If they had not re-signed him, there would have been a big hole in that lineup. They also re-signed Trent Grisham. He accepted their qualifying offer. Grisham had a breakout season. He was always a prospect in San Diego, but never really put it all together. He batted .235 last year, but he hit 34 home runs in New York and drove in 74 runs. The big question is, can he replicate that? Again, it was a breakout campaign for him. Can he replicate it? The Yankees gave him a qualifying offer. Whether they assumed he would accept it or not, I do not know. Then, in a trade with the Marlins, the Yankees got Ryan Weathers, who was a good prospect for the Padres years ago, ended up with the Marlins and is now with the Yankees. Last year, he was 2-2 with a 3.99 ERA. 2 years ago, he was 5-6 with a 3.63 ERA. I think he's got some upside, and if he's healthy, I think can help them from a starting standpoint. So I like Ryan Weathers. I like that signing. And as I play fantasy baseball, he's somebody I'm going to keep my eye on. They also signed some depth on the infield and hitting side, including Paul DeJong. He was actually signed to a minor league deal. Ahmed Rosario re-signed with the Yankees on a 1-year deal. The Yankees also signed to a 1-year deal Ryan Yarborough. Yarborough last year, 3-1 with a 4.36 ERA, kind of a swingman. 19 games last year, 8 games started. So what about the bullpen? The only bullpen arm that they really signed is Paul Blackburn, who was 0-3 with a 6.23 ERA last year. This is why I say you really have to consider re-signing Jake Cousins. When you look at the Yankees last year, offensively, they were 10th in the league in average. They were first in the league in OPS. Certainly thank you, Aaron Judge, for that. How does their lineup look this year? So again, you've got Trent Grisham, 34 home runs. Aaron Judge, 53 home runs, 12 stolen bases, 331 average, MVP. What can you say about Judge? Let's just hope if you're a Yankees fan, he stays healthy. Re-signing Cody Bellinger was huge. Giancarlo Stanton, 273 last year, 24 home runs. It was kind of a nice comeback later in the year after he had some serious shoulder issues. Jazz Chisholm is still there. Now, Chisholm had a down year, I would say, 242 batting average. Now, he did hit 31 home runs and stole 31 bases. It's just his average was not where I think they expected it to be. From there, then, you've got guys like Ben Rice, 255 hitter. He hit 26 home runs. And then you have Ryan McMahon, Jose Caballero, Austin Wells, Oswaldo Cabrera, Jason Dominguez. I think this is a big year for Jason Dominguez. He was a highly touted prospect a couple years ago. I remember I loaded up on baseball cards for him. And last year, batted .257, 10 homers, 23 stolen bases. I think this is a big year for him. I'm not all that enthused about the Yankees lineup. Again, anybody can get enthused about a lineup when you have an Aaron Judge in the lineup, but we'll see. On the starting pitching side, this is a team that's starting rotation, 4th in ERA, 8th in WHIP. You look at it, Max Fried had a really good year, 2.86 ERA, 195 innings pitched. Garrett Cole is probably not going to be back until the middle of the year at best. Carlos Rodon had elbow surgery to clean up some bone spurs. He's going to be out until late April, early May. He's a huge piece of that rotation. Clark Schmidt is going to be out until the second half of 26 at least. He had a Tommy John surgery. So they're missing some pieces. You've got Max Fried, and beyond that, you have pitchers that really haven't proven themselves beyond what I'll call a short period of time. Cam Schlittler, 2.96 ERA last year, really, really good. Is he going to be able to repeat that? He's 25 years old. Will Warren, 4.44 ERA last year. He's 26 years old. Can he give you 162 solid middle of the rotation innings? Luis Gil is a comeback year for him, hopefully. 3.32 ERA last year, only started 11 games due to injury. He's going to have that 2024 campaign rerun. And then Ryan Weathers, again, I think he could have a big year, but right now I'm not loving that Yankees rotation. I'm also concerned about their bullpen. Last year, when you look at their bullpen, they were in the bottom half of the league, bottom third of the league, and they lost a lot of guys. So, they're coming back with David Bednar as the closer, and a bunch of guys that have a lot of question marks. So we are going to have to wait and see what happens with the New York Yankees. From a prospect standpoint, the players that could debut this year, number 59 prospect in baseball, Elmer Rodriguez, is right-hand pitcher. A debut in 26 is not out of the question, especially if some of these injuries persist on the pitching side. Carlos LaGrange is the number 93 prospect in baseball. He is also a pitcher. He is 6'7", can throw well over 100 miles an hour. So that will be interesting. And then one guy that I always have an eye on, he's not in the top 100, but Spencer Jones, he could be a huge, big prospect. The problem is he's kind of hit or miss. He can go through tears where he's dominant and looks like an Aaron Judge. And then there are times when he goes ice cold. So I will come back and look at the American League East and tell you who I think is the most improved team. But first, let's switch and look at the National League East. All right, so the first team in the National League East to look at is the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves, disappointing year last year, and there are reasons for that. Lots went wrong for the Braves last year. Jurickson Profar suspended 80 games for PED usage. Ronaldo Lopez had shoulder surgery. Spencer Strider didn't bounce back as strong as they had hoped he would. Austin Riley had a strained lower abdominal muscle that led then to core surgery. The bullpen was disappointing for years. So a lot went wrong for the Braves last year. Now, what have they done? What have they done to address it? So Marcell Ozuna is still a free agent, and not sure if he'll be re-signed or not. I think he will by the Braves, but last year was a disappointing year. 232, 21 home runs, 68 RBIs. He's 35 years old now, but he's coming off of 2024 where he batted .302 with 39 homers and 104 RBIs. I don't think you just give up on a guy like that. He could be a bounce back candidate. They have lost Alek Manoah, starting pitcher whose career just kind of went sideways, backwards, whatever you want to call it. They lost utility player Nick Allen in a trade with the Astros, and they lost Pierce Johnson out of the bullpen. Johnson was 3-3 with a 3.05 ERA, 120 WHIP, so a nice bullpen arm. But what have they done? What have they added? Let's talk about first players they're counting on to have bounce back year. And again, Jurickson Profar, provided he stays out of trouble, will have a full year in the outfield or as a designated hitter, possibly for the Braves. They will have Austin Riley, hopefully back for a full season. So those are upgrades. Can Ozzie Albies do more than 240 with only 16 home runs and only 14 stolen bases? I think they're looking a lot at those players and saying, look, we're going to think that they're going to have bounce back years. But they also invested. So they added a Ha-Seong Kim, who I really like. He's a good player. Didn't have a great year last year, 234, 5 home runs, 17 RBIs. He was re-signed on a 1-year deal. I think he could play a key piece, and hopefully he bounces back a little bit. They added a Mike Yastrzemski. I like Mike Yastrzemski. He's a 234 or a 233 hitter, 17 home runs, 46 RBIs, great off the bench. I like them building their bench a little bit. They also added Mauricio Dubon in a trade with the Astros, 241 hitter, 7 home runs, 33 RBIs. Depth. They added Jorge Mateo, shortstop. He did not play much for the Orioles last year due to injury, but the guy can steal bases. And then they build up their bullpen significantly. Robert Suarez signed a 3-year deal, one of the best relief pitchers in baseball, 297 ERA with 40 saves last year and a .9 whip. They added Razel Iglesias. He actually re-signed. He wasn't an ad, but they re-signed him to a 1-year deal. 3.21 ERA last year, 73 strikeouts in 67 innings. So that is a nice addition. They added or kept Tyler McKinney, re-signed him to a 1-year deal, 3.96 ERA. They re-signed Joel Payampas to a 1-year deal, and they added Danny Young and Ian Hamilton into the pen. Both of those were 1-year deals. Hamilton had a 4.28 ERA in 40 innings last year. I think they made some nice additions. When you look at this team offensively, they were middle of the pack. Starting rotation, they were in the bottom half, even bottom third. Relief pitching, they were kind of midway. When I look at the lineup and I see a Ronald Acuna in there, and just always hoping health with Acuna. Matt Olson, 29 home runs last year. See what Profar can do in a full season this year. You have Austin Riley. You have, again, Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris. There's a lot to like with this lineup, provided some players bounce back. And then from a starting pitching standpoint, again, didn't go as well as they wanted last year, but you still have Chris Sale at the top of the rotation, 2.58 ERA. You have Spencer Schwellenbach, who was had a very nice season, second round draft pick in 2021. He pitched to a 3.09 ERA. Ronaldo Lopez should be back for a full season this year, hopefully. Spencer Strider, let's see, another year removed from another elbow surgery. Can he build on that 4.45 ERA? And, he's still striking out more than a batter an inning. And then you have Hurston Waldrop, who don't love the name, but Hurston Waldrop pitched to a 2.88 ERA last year. So maybe some improvements there. And then again, I think re-signing some of their players, adding a Suarez to the back of the rotation, I think they've made some improvements here. When you look at some of their prospects, there's not a lot there that is going to add a lot to the Braves this year. They have the 84th best prospect, according to Baseball America. That's J.R. Ritchie. He's a right-hand pitcher. He could get some starts in 2026, but you pretty much have what you're going to get unless you add another arm or another bat. And again, I'm not sure if Ozuna will be resigned or not. Time will tell. So let's turn to the Marlins now. The Marlins didn't have a ton of activity. They've made decisions on their free agents. They have lost through trade Edward Cabrera, who is a very nice young arm, 3.53 ERA, 150 strikeouts in 137 innings. They lost Ryan Weathers to the Yankees. We talked about that. They lost outfielder Joey Weimer and Dane Myers in trades, and also Eric Wegeman in trades. What did they acquire? Well, that Cubs trade for Edward Cabrera brought over Owen Casey, who there's a lot of upside there for him. I'm excited to see how he performs in Miami. He's the kind of player I think that offense needs to get going. We will see if he makes the opening day lineup. I think he will. He did get some bats for the Cubs last year, so that will be interesting to see. They signed Pete Fairbanks to a 1-year deal. That's a good bullpen arm. 2.83 ERA, 104 whip. That will help. They signed Christopher Morel to a 1-year deal. He just hasn't really materialized as a batter. 219 last year, 685 OPS. And they added Estuary Ruiz in a trade with the Dodgers. Look, this is a guy that had 67 stolen bases with the A's back in 2023, and he batted 254 that year. Not that he's not that player right now. We'll see what they can do with him, hopefully to get him back on track. So again, not a lot of players going out other than Cabrera by a trade and Weathers. Not a lot coming in, although Casey could be a good young player for them, and Fairbanks is a good bullpen arm. They do have some prospects that could make their debut in the majors this year. They have the 13th best prospect in baseball, according to Baseball America. That's Thomas White. He's a starting pitcher. So he could be major league bound in 2026. They have the 41st best prospect, another starting pitching. I mean, this is a team that just cranks out young starting pitchers. Robbie Snelling, he could make the majors in 2026. We talked about Casey. And then another one to keep your eye on is catcher Joe Mack. He will probably start the year in AAA. He's the 55th best prospect in baseball, according to Baseball America. Look, I think it's going to be another down year for the Marlins. When I look at, their batting last year, their hitting, they were top half of the league in average, right around the middle in OPS. Their starting pitching was definitely back end, back third, back, 25th percentile, I would say. And then their bullpen, again, back third. I look at their pitching. Sandy Alcantara, he pitched much better down the stretch than he did earlier in the year. Yuri Perez is a good young pitcher. Max Meyer is a good young pitcher. Talked about some of the prospects that they have. When you look at their lineup, it's kind of weak. Kyle Stowers was a nice story last year, 288 with 25 home runs. But it's not the kind of lineup that's going to wow you. I think it's going to be a tough year for the Marlins again, until they can get some of this, their minor league system going again, work on their pitching, and also work on their hitting. So let's talk about the New York Mets. And I'm doing this today, and I don't know, they may have made another deal at this point. Who knows? But the Mets were disappointing last year. Were disappointing at the beginning of the offseason. Lost some players that really upset fans, but they are in the competition for winning the offseason. So let's talk about what happened. A lot of changes on the Mets. Currently, they have free agents that are out there. They're unsigned. That includes Griffin Canning, who threw 76 innings for them last year. Max Kranick, starting pitcher, only threw 37 innings last year. They have Sterling Marte out there as a free agent, and then some others. They lost Pete Alonso to the Orioles. We talked about it. Huge bat in the middle of that lineup that they lost. Edwin Diaz to the glorious Dodgers, who get what they want. Sorry, I'm a little bitter. Diaz, 163 ERA, 28 saves, one of the best relief pitchers in baseball. They lost Brandon Nimmo in a trade with the Rangers. Kind of a fan favorite, 25 home runs, 92 RBIs. Jeff McNeil, trade to the Athletics. McNeil, I never really liked McNeil, wasn't a great fantasy player. I just, he could hit for average, although he batted 243 last year, but didn't have a lot of power, didn't drive in that many runs. They lost Tyler Rogers, a huge bullpen loss. So not only did you lose Edwin Diaz, you used one of the best setup men in baseball in Tyler Rogers. They lost Cedric Mullins, not a big deal. Ryan Helsley had an off year for them last year, and the Orioles signed him. So they had a lot of losses. And for a long time, they didn't do much. Now, they did sign Devin Williams to a 3-year deal. And look, he is a great bounce back candidate in that bullpen. Again, such a good change up. I could see him doing what he did with the Brewers a couple of years ago. So I love that pickup. I love the signing of Jorge Polanco. Really underrated guy. He is so steady. Second baseman, 265 hitter, 26 home runs, 78 RBIs last year, and 821 OPS. I really like that signing by them. Luis Garcia signed a 1-year deal. He'll be in the bullpen for him, 3.42 ERA, 55 innings pitched. So, they made those signings and they were good. The other one they made was in a trade was Marcus Semien, came over from the Rangers. He had a down year, and he's 35 years old now. Last year, he batted 230 with 15 homers, 62 RBIs, only 11 stolen bases. Again, it was a down year for him. But then, all of a sudden, They signed Bo Bichette. Huge, huge pickup. Bo Bichette, we talked about him earlier. 4 of the last 5 years, 175 hits or more. 311 average last year, drove in over 90 runs, 18 home runs. He will fit right in at shortstop. Huge move. Then, Luis Robert. And I never know if it's Robert or Robert. I'll say Luis Robert. Really down year last year. And he played for a White Sox team that is lifeless at times. Only batted .223 last year with a .661 OPS. Awful. 14 home runs, 53 RBIs. He did steal 33 bases. A far cry from what he did in 2023 when he batted .315 with 38 home runs, 80 RBIs, and 20 stolen bases. He finished 12th in MVP voting that year. He's only a couple years removed from that. So I really like it. I think he will absolutely be a bounce back candidate and somebody that could make up for some of those home runs that they lost in Alonso. And then last night, they make a huge trade. They get Freddie Peralta from the Brewers. Peralta, 176 innings last year, 204 strikeouts, a 270 ERA. Huge moves, 3 huge moves to add to what else they did. So I really like what the Mets did. If you look at them, they were middle of the pack in hitting last year, although 6th in OPS. Their starting pitching was kind of back half of the league, 18th in ERA, 26th in WHIP, and their relief pitching was kind of middle of the pack. But now, you look at that lineup, you've got Francisco Lindor, 31 homers, 31 stolen bases last year, 267 average. Did we forget about Juan Soto? I mean, he only batted .263 last year. Only batted .263 last year. OPS over 900. 43 home runs last year. Juan Soto, huge bat. Now you're adding Bo Bichette in there. You're adding Jorge Polanco. And Polanco might play first base, by the way, which might not value him as much at first base versus a second base. But you have Marcus Semien at second base. See what he can provide. You have Luis Robert now. Again, what can he do? And he might bat down in the order. So I really like that order. I really like that lineup. There's a lot to like there. If you look at their starting pitching, Nolan McLean is one of the top prospects in baseball, and he will be in the starting rotation this year. 206 ERA in only 48 innings last year, but he's the real deal. He is the real deal. Clay Holmes had a really nice year, 3.53 ERA last year for the Mets. I like that a lot. Sean Manaea had a disappointing year last year, but he did really well 2 years ago. So I don't mind that. Dave Peterson threw 168 innings last year, 4.22 ERA. Kind of like that. But now they get Freddie Peralta to throw in there. So you're going to have Nolan McLean, Freddie Peralta to add into those other guys. I love it. I absolutely love it. Not to mention their bullpen, adding a Devin Williams. He is probably going to close for them. Hopefully he has a bounce back year. You've got AJ Minter, who they picked up last year and had a really nice year, 1.64 ERA. Brooks Raley at 2.45 ERA. That bullpen looks pretty good. So I think there's a lot. Again, I say it often. There's a lot to like there. They did have to give up some prospects in order to get Peralta, and really good prospects. Number 51, Brandon Sproat, according to Baseball America. He was traded along with Jet Williams, the number 71 prospect in baseball. But this is a team that has a lot of good prospects in the minor leagues. We talked about Nolan McLean, who will be in the starting rotation this year. Carson Benj is the number 19 prospect in baseball. And Benj has a shot to make the 25-man roster as an outfielder breaking camp with them. Jonah Tong is the 44th best prospect in baseball. He saw some action with the Mets last year. He could break camp with them. I think it's more likely he starts the year in AAA, but we will see. AJ Ewing is an outfield prospect, still 21 years old, He'll probably start the year at AA or AAA. He's the 83rd best prospect in baseball. Ryan Clifford is just outside of the top 25, and he could get a look. He's an outfielder, probably AA, AAA this year. And then Jacob Reimer is another infield prospect just outside of the top 100. So there's a lot to like for this Mets team. I keep saying a lot to like, I know, but I'm very intrigued by this team. Um, I think there's some stuff to look forward to. They've got some injuries, unfortunately. Tyler McGill, Reed Garrett, they're both going to be out for the year with Tommy John surgery. So, but I still think they've made a nice comeback here. Congratulations to my New York area Mets fans. Let's talk about the Nationals, and this will be a quick one, I think, because there hasn't been a lot of activity. Free agents, they have Derek Law, who is still a free agent, not a big name by any means. They did lose Jose Ferrer in a trade with the Mariners. He was a bullpen arm. Josh Bell, they lost a nice piece, 22 home runs, 63 RBIs, 742 OPS. That's kind of what he is, though. We know that from his time in Pittsburgh and then Washington. And then Paul DeJong is with the Yankees now. I mentioned his name before, a nice utility piece. Acquisitions, two small ones. That trade with the Mariners brought them Harry Ford, a catcher, and then Foster Griffin. They signed to a 1-year deal. So not a lot of activity for a team that finished in the bottom third as far as hitting goes, near the bottom as far as starting pitching goes, and at the bottom as far as bullpen goes. You look at the lineup. Yes, they have James Wood, who is a really good 23-year-old player, 31 home runs, 15 stolen bases last year. CJ Abrams, 31 stolen bases last year, 257 average. Dylan Cruz is 23 years old, will be 24 before opening day. Had a short season due to injury last year, but I think that he, I expect more from him this year. He's a good young prospect. Luis Garcia is under the radar, 25, 26 years old, 252 hitter, 16 home runs, 14 stolen bases. Wouldn't be surprised if they moved him at some point. I like him. He's pretty consistent. Now they're playing him at first base this year, which again, not what the type of stats you really want from a first baseman, but he's a nice player. Beyond that, not a lot on the hitting side for the Nats. Then you look at the starting pitching, and you've got Mackenzie Gore, who is a really nice pitcher. He'll be 27 soon. I remember when he was such a young guy, but he started clicking last year, 4.17 ERA, down the stretch, kind of didn't pitch as well, but he still threw close to 160 innings last year. And 185 strikeouts in 160 innings. They had him on the trade market, thinking they could get a nice piece in return. No movement there. The other one to keep an eye on, I think, is Josiah Gray. I like him. He's now 28 years old. Not a bad starting pitcher. Things do not look good for the Nationals. They don't have a lot of great pieces. Yes, they have Wood, tremendous piece. And then I mentioned Dylan Cruz, CJ Abrams, although Abrams is now 25. When you look at their minor leagues, their prospects, they have no top 100 prospects older than 22. What I mean there is they don't have anybody that's going to make a major league impact this year. Probably not make a major league impact this year. They do have the 31st best prospect in baseball, and that's Eli Willits. And he's a shortstop. He's only 18 years old. He will be the shortstop of the future there, which is really nice. They do have to move some players, I think, to get younger players and really build up their minor league system. I think that that's what they really need to focus on this year. So that leaves us with the Philadelphia Phillies, the last team we're going to look at, and a team that, again, had a ton of movement in. We talked about Ranger Suarez. That's a big loss for the Phillies. That's 157 innings at a 3.20 ERA that they're going to have to make up, a 122 whip. They lost Matt Strahm in a trade with the Royals. Strahm is a really good bullpen arm, 2.74 ERA, 107 whip. He threw in 66 games for the Phillies last year. And then Jordan Romano, not as big of a piece, has battled injuries and actually only his ERA was like over 8 last year. So those are the players that they lost. They still have as free agents Harrison Bader, who is a really nice player, who is still a free agent, and I'm surprised by that. 796 OPS last year, 17 home runs, 54 RBIs, 11 stolen bases. Uh, he's a good player. He's a good outfielder. Will he end up back in Philadelphia? I don't know. They may not have room for him. Walker Bueller is no longer with the Phillies as of now. He would be a good rotation piece or even bullpen arm. He threw 126 innings last year, 10-7, 4.93 ERA, 152 WHIP. You don't like that. Max Kepler, 18 home runs, 52 RBIs. There's something there. And then, some bullpen arms, Tim Miza, Daniel Robert, David Robertson, and Lou Trevino, no longer there. So when you look at this team last year, their batting average was second in baseball. Their OPS was fourth. Their starting pitching was second in ERA, fifth in WHIP. And from a relief standpoint, they were kind of middle to back end of the league. So what did they added? Talk to you about who they lost, and the big two were, Suarez, Stram, and maybe Harrison Bader. They re-signed Kyle Schwarber, which was huge, right? I actually thought they were going to be in the Kyle Tucker mix, but they end up re-signing Kyle Schwarber, 240. But it's not about average with Schwarber. It's about his 56 home runs, 132 RBIs, and 928 OPS. They re-signed Real Muto, JT, their catcher. He'll be 35 on opening day. 257, 12 home runs, 52 RBIs last year, only a 699 OPS, but pretty consistent guy. They signed Brad Keller, who has become a really nice bullpen piece, 4-2 with a 2.7 ERA. They signed him to a 2-year deal, close to 70 innings pitched last year. Adolis Garcia, they added on a 1-year deal. He only batted 227 last year, 19 home runs, 75 RBIs, but a nice addition. They added a couple bullpen pieces as well in Jonathan Bolin and Kyle Backus. I guess the question is, in losing Suarez, can they afford to do that, knowing that they re-signed a couple of big pieces and added a Brad Keller in the bullpen and added an Adolis Garcia on offense? And, I think this is going to be a good team. Again, their bullpen was shaky. Stram is probably replaced by Brad Keller. If you look at their lineup, Trey Turner had a really nice year, 304 with 15 home runs and 36 stolen bases. We talked about Schwarber. Bryce Harper, 261 with 27 home runs. Harper's now 33 years old. That's hard to believe. Alex Bohm, 287 hitter with 11 home runs. Brandon Marsh has been a nice defensive piece on that team, 280 with 11 home runs. We talked about Garcia. He's probably going to have an everyday or almost everyday role in right field. And then they have a good prospect who might break camp with them this year, and that is Justin Crawford. He is ranked as the 75th best prospect by Baseball America. Elite speed, really good contact ability. I would not be surprised if he was the starter in center field. That is why they let Harrison Bader walk. It would be great if they could get Bader on a 1-year deal, kind of a bridge year for him. I think he's going to seek much more than a 1-year deal from someone. So offensively, I think they're in pretty good shape. Pitching wise, I worry a little bit. Did they do enough after they lost Suarez? They need Aaron Nola to have a huge bounce back year. Nola was disappointing, 6.01 ERA in 94 innings. He is now 32 years old, but they need a bounce back year from him. Christopher Sanchez, just 29-year-old who originally signed with Tampa Bay, came into the mix last year from a starting pitching standpoint, pitched to a 2.50 ERA, 202 innings, 212 strikeouts. What a year for Sanchez. And if he can repeat that, that's huge. Obviously, the Phillies think he can. Jesus Luzardo, 183 innings. He was healthy, 3.92 ERA. I think he can continue to improve as well. He's 28 years old. Taijuan Walker threw 123 innings last year to around a 4 ERA. And then you have Andrew Painter, who Painter is consistently been one of the best prospects in baseball. Tommy John surgery. This is his first year back. He's had some arm slot issues, but that's fixable, just where he's releasing the ball and what his arm angle is. There's a chance he could break camp with them as the back of the rotation, starting rotation pitcher, but we'll see. They also have a 21-year-old shortstop who's the 14th best prospect in baseball. That's Aiden Miller. He could be the future replacement for Trey Turner. Again, 21 years old, so we'll see what happens there. The biggest question is, you saw what the Mets did, just told you what the Phillies did. We talked about the other teams in the league. Did they do enough? That'll be the big question. All right, now bringing this all together, let me go back to the American League East and let me look at the teams of the American League East and who has had the best offseason so far? Who has improved the most? I think it's pretty easy to say the team that has improved the least is the Tampa Bay Rays. Again, this is not a show about predictions, but I can't see them finishing very high considering the lack of activity that they've had. I think the team that has improved the fourth most in the American League East is probably the Yankees. Yes, they re-signed some of their own guys. I think they still have starting pitching questions, and they just didn't do a whole lot outside of re-signing some of their own guys. I think the Red Sox were the third most improved team. Yes, when you lose, a huge piece in an Alex Bregman, when you lose a piece like that, that's hard to replicate. I think they did a decent job by getting Wilson Contreras and then signing Ranger Suarez to add to their starting pitching. So I think they've made the third best improvements. I think the Orioles are the second best improved team. Really nice additions. Obviously, one of the best hitters in baseball. When you add a guy like Pete Alonso, that's huge. Ryan Helsley to help in the bullpen, Shane Baz in a trade, who I think could end up, I said before, being one of their best starting pitchers this year. Taylor Ward and his 36 home runs. I don't know if they're done yet. I think they could still add a Framber Valdez, a Zach Gallen, one of those guys. I think they're the second best improved team. And then it's hard not to say the Blue Jays are the most improved team. When you add Dylan Cease, Tyler Rogers, you add an Okamoto and a Ponce from Asia. Those are big. And, they were in on Kyle Tucker. That would have been really big. They did lose Bo Bichette. That's a big loss. I'm not certain the Blue Jays are done either. Bassett still sits out there. He could be re-signed. We'll see. But that's how I see it right now. I'd say the Blue Jays and Orioles, are maybe I'm giving the Blue Jays a little too much of an advantage there, but I would definitely say the Blue Jays and Orioles are at one tier, the Red Sox are at another, the Yankees are at another, and then Tampa Bay's kind of down at the bottom. So how do I see then the National League? Well, we talked about the Nationals. They did very little, almost nothing, and they are definitely the least improved team in my mind. I think they're going to take a step back record-wise as well. The Marlins are the fourth most improved team or the second least improved team. We talked about what they did. I think the Braves did more than what you see on paper. I kind of like the bullpen addition of Suarez, re-signing some of their guys. I do like the Mike Yastrzemski signing. I like Ha-Seong Kim being re-signed. I'm not sure about Ozuna and could they re-sign him yet, but I think they some good things with the hope that some of their players that had down years or were hurt will bounce back. So I have them as the third most improved team. Phillies, number 2. Again, they lost a Ranger Suarez, but re-signing their own players is huge. I like Brad Keller. Adolis Garcia is a nice add. So I think they're second. And then the Mets, I know they lost a lot, but they have done more in the last week to 10 days than anyone. And I really like where they are. Now, I mentioned, just to close it out, I mentioned there are still ducks on the pond, players out there that could be signed. Framber Valdez is one of those. I absolutely think the Orioles are in talks with him. I think he wants a 6-7 year deal. Don't think the Orioles want to do that. Would they give him 4 or 5? I think they could. If the Orioles don't get Valdez, I think Zach Gallen is another possibility. Gallen a little bit younger, maybe not quite as good. Valdez, his WAR in 2025 was 4 versus a Gallen who was 1.1. Eugenio Suarez is still out there. I still just feel like he is going to go to Seattle. Harrison Bader's still out there. Not sure if he's going to end up for the Phillies, but he is a really nice outfielder that somebody should sign. I think he wants a multi-year deal. We'll see if he gets it. Chris Bassett, I mentioned, is still out there. He was with the Blue Jays last year. You still have a Justin Verlander out there. There's been some talk around the Orioles with Verlander. I think Verlander is a 100-inning guy, but a good 100-inning guy. You know, he pitched to a 2.2 WAR last year. You can't complain about that. Nick Martinez is still out there, a swingman from Cincinnati who, look, I like Nick Martinez. He can be in the bullpen. He can be a starting pitcher. I think he's going to be a nice pickup for somebody. The Red Sox had Giolito last year. He's still out there. Do they re-sign him? Maybe not now that they've signed Suarez, but it's a nice name that's out there. I mentioned Marcell Ozuna. Feels like the Braves would want to re-sign him, but he's been out there for a while now. And again, he's 35 years old. Another name I have out there that kind of I highlighted was Rhys Hoskins. That was with Milwaukee last year. It's not a bad bat. So, you know, look, there are still good players out there that could be signed. So again, we'll need to look at this in probably less detail next time, but certainly as we go team by team throughout spring training, we'll look at the final list and where everybody ends up. But hopefully this gives you an idea of the Eastern divisions of the American League and National League. We will look at the Central divisions in a couple of days, and then we'll go to the Western divisions. But hopefully this was informative and gives you an idea of where teams stand. All right, so that's a wrap on the American League and National League East and teams that improved, teams that didn't improve, signings, all of that. Again, we have to have something to look forward to coming out of football. So I'm just planting some seeds. And pitchers and catchers report it's less than 30 days. So that's something to be excited about. So we'll get through all of these divisions by the Super Bowl so that when the Super Bowl is over, you can go back, rewatch this podcast and the other ones that I have in the Central and West divisions coming up and get excited about baseball. Does that sound like a deal? Hopefully it does. We will have our regular football show this week, probably Saturday. I think we're recording Saturday morning. And then I have another rewind sessions coming at you, the football flavor to get us ready for the Super Bowl. It's a good movie, a movie that I remember my dad watching and really enjoyed it. And I had watched bits and pieces of it, but sat down and watched it. And it's there's some really interesting observations about it. That's all I'm going to say for now. So look forward to that. Bailey just spoke up and said she's looking forward to it. So that's good. She's looking forward to the upcoming episodes. Remember, follow me, please, on X, Tell Us Ellis HQ, and on Instagram, Tell Us Ellis HQ, and then also on YouTube. Please, please, please click the subscribe button at Tell Us Ellis Media. I want to get more subscribers, and hopefully you like this podcast. If you did, click the like button and email me with any questions, thoughts. If you're interested in joining the show, Jamie@tellusellis.com. That's all for now. Great being with you, and I will talk to you soon.